Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancer, and in this week's we're going to be developing an amazing equipment rental application complete with pictures of equipment, check-in, check-out date. We've also going to have brand new buttons and an amazing pop-up shaped calendar, all from scratch, all from the beginning. So I can't wait to show that to you. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. I've got another amazing application I want to create for you right in front of you today, and that's going to be the equipment rental application. As you can see, we're starting out with an absolutely blank sheet. I do have some other sheets with some information on it, and we're going to go over that soon. Just before we start, if you have not yet subscribed, I would love for you to do so. We've got an amazing over 100,000 subscribers, trying to get to 200,000 subscribers with your help. So if you have not done so yet, I do create these videos each and every week for you for free. So I always appreciate your patronage, your subscription. So if you want to click that subscription, and don't forget the notifications icon bell as well. That way you'll get alerted to each and every brand new training that I'm going to create for you. And make sure you download the application, always free, and I'll always include the links in the description below with your email or your Facebook Messenger, and we'll get that right over to you. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you joining me. The subscriptions has gone through the roof, so I really appreciate that. If you do like these trainings, of course, I've got an amazing Excel mentorship program where we're going to be creating an amazing application and a huge accounting application where I teach you to create your own applications. In fact, here is a little preview of the invoice screen that we just started working on here on week 17, which is where we're at. But you should start anytime. It would be great. We'll bring you week to week and how to build up amazing applications. In this particular application, this invoice screen, as you're taking a look at this here, we just started working on it, but users are going to have the right to customize their own invoices. So when you click this customize, it's going to open up this brand new panel. It's going to show you be able to select any label, any data just by simply selecting it. It's going to display that, and then users can drag and drop those fields anywhere on the invoice they want, and that includes labels. And of course, they're going to be able to change the colors, change the look, change the borders, and everything they want on those invoice. Whether it's invoice details, they'll also be able to control the widths of the columns, show the columns, hide the columns, display footers, show tax, hide tax. Pretty much anything you want in a fully customizable invoices. That's just one of the amazing things that we have going on in this accounting application that I'm teaching you in the mentorship program. We've got an amazing chart of accounts field here. We're going to be able to showing pop-up quick release features, a ton of amazing features in this application. So I hope that you will join us, and I'll include the links down below for the mentorship program. All right, let's get started on this week's application. I'm going to be creating a equipment rental application that's going to allow you to use this application or sell this application or do whatever you like with this application, customize it. The first thing I want to do, of course, is drop this down, and we're going to save those first two columns for admin. You'll eventually want to hide them, so we're going to color them in gray. This is where our details are going to go, and then you'll hide it. I'll include this top row for the title. In fact, we'll go all the way over to J, and I'm going to put just a fade out color as we have done in the past, but we'll create a new color. I want to do a fill, and I'm going to do a fill effects. Create just something kind of a nice color to give it a good look. We'll go for this blue and then a lighter blue. And then on the row down, what I'm going to do is I am going to bring it a little bit lighter color here in just this little mini row here, because I've spaced the rows out to help us move things along. I know these trainings can be long, and I know there's a lot of work, so I try to do as much as I can in advance as possible. So we're going to color that just a little bit, and then I'll give the background a color, and I'll probably go down to row, let's say just 30 or something like that. So basically what I want to do is I want to create a form, and this entire form is going to take care of all of our rental units here. We're allowed to be able to rent equipment, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a list of orders. Those orders are going to go on here. Every time we create a new order, it's going to go here. We'll be able to track the customer, the order date, created by date, the rent out date, expected return date. So this is where the tables are going to go. I've already pre-filled it with a list of equipment, and I've got some pictures in a folder here so we can see some pictures. I'm going to have these pictures appear on the form too, because I want to show pictures and show what kind of equipment people are going to be renting out. In fact, if you combine other trainings, we can create a receipt or an invoice with these pictures if you want. So we've got that. I've got a list of customers, just pre-filled out a few customers with basic information, nothing too important there. Order items, this is where our orders are going to go. So all the items that we ordered, and then based on order ID. So that means every time users can check out multiple equipment, right? So you can have one order with an unlimited number of equipment that they can rent out and return, and we want to pull a rate. And then I also have a calendar pop-up. This is something that I've used in the past. This is just a calendar that I've created. We're going to use this on the page, but what you can do is I'm going to show you how to use this calendar on any type of application you want. So it's great, but we do need to start out with this calendar page. This is a shape-based calendar, so you can change the colors and change all kinds of things on it. So make sure this sheet changed. You can drag this sheet to any other application if you want. We'll get into that and I'll show you exactly how we're going to use it, but our order sheet is going to be blank. So let's give it a start and let's give it a title and some icons, of course. Let's pull it up. We'll call this equipment rental application. Equipment rental application. Make sure I spelled that right, because often if I don't, I won't catch it, and then you'll have to look at my misspelling for the next hour. Okay, looks good. So I'll increase the font something to probably about 24, and then give it a bold and italicize, and then we're going to merge it across. Let's just say we'll go here to I, just so we can get a good idea of it. All right, so what I want to do is I want to create some fields here. We'll start in, let's say, 4. I'm going to put the customer here, and then I want the expected rent out date here, and then expected return date. We want an expected. We want to know when they expect to return. Expected return date, so that we can price out, at least give them an estimated price. And then I also want the actual return date, or actual return on. That's fine. Either way is good. So this way we can have a customer here, or the returned on, and then I want some more fields. I want the order number. We got to track each order. Should have its own order number. And the order date. What's the date that they ordered it on? This will be automatically created. And then I want it created by. We can put in whoever created by. We can put in whoever created the application, whoever created the order, I should say. Duration. What is the duration? This is going to be automated. How long are they checked it out for? Pricing can be priced on this duration. So that's really important. And then the next field, I want another field, something like total rented price. Total rental, I guess we could say rental price, because this is going to be all of the items combined. Like if they have multiple equipment, we want the total here. And then I want to know how many payments they've made, in case they've made a deposit or they paid it all in full. We need to know the payments. So payments will go here, and then probably total amount due based on the payments. So that'll be pretty easy. All right, so these are going to be automated, but payments is going to be entered by the user. So I'm going to color this white, just the fields that they can enter here. So created by, and then customer, rented out, these dates. These are all date fields. So we're going to put those in white because they're going to be formed, and I'm going to left justify those, left. And then I'm going to put, these are going to be right justified. I'm going to put a border around those as well, just so we give them some kind of uniformity. And I'm going to put a table down below too. So I'm going to right justify those, format those, and I'll put a border around those because I want it to be a nice clean look. And I'll use a color consistent with my theme. So I'm going to use this darker blue here. And then I'm going to put it all the way around, but I'm going to put a dotted line on the right. And I'm going to do the same thing, except the dotted line is going to be on the left. As I hold down the control, select all the fields in which our user is going to enter. In fact, I'll add these two, format those cells, and then I'm going to put the borders, just a solid border on the left, and the right, the top, and the and the bottom. All right, so the same thing with this one here. I want to do actually I want to put the number of days here, and I want to put the formula here. So let's put that in there, format cells. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the border here, just added this color border. Okay, so our form is starting to come together now. We can see how it's going to look, and it gives us a good idea of what we're going to be having. And I also want a table down here. Let's just format those cells. That's where we're going to be putting in our formula for the calculated number of days. Now, the calculated number of days can be based on two factors. It can be based on the expected rent out date and the return date, or if there's an actual return on, it can be based on the rent out date and the returned on. So we need two different, so the duration can be based on either one of those. Then in 12, I want a table. So I'm going to put in equipment. I want to know the equipment that was rented out, equipment, probably name, and then description. We have equipment description, and then the status. I want to know if it's been rented or if it's available. That's important. The rate, how much is the rate? The daily rate, we can put in daily rate. And then duration, how many days, of course, and then the total. This will be calculated. Okay, so that's going to be the top of our table, so let's color it accordingly. We're going to center it in there. I'm going to put borders all the way around it, format the cells. It's a little bit off the screen, sorry about that. I'll drag it up. I'll use the same border color, and I'll color the outside and inside, and then I'm going to give it a fill, again, a fill effect, so that it looks a little bit different than everything else. And then I'll use this fade out color here. Okay, so now our table's starting to come together, and I'm not going to create a very large table because I want to make sure it's on the screen for you. I don't want to go off the screen too much, so let's go down to, say, 26. And then what we'll do is we'll format those cells, just create a little bit of a table here. Again, using the same colored border all the way around. I'll use just a lighter, maybe a lighter dotted line in here. A little bit lighter in the center vertically. Okay, and then I also want to alternate the color rows. So we're going to add conditional formatting to color alternating rows, color the even rows. How do we do that? We'll use a formula for that, and then something that's automated for me. Because I use AutoHotkey, you can download that for free, and it just automatically types in this formula will color even rows. 2 equals 0 means even rows. So I want to give it a format and a fill. Use this, but a little bit lighter. So I'm going to drop it a little bit lighter here. And that's going to give us alternating rows so that we can easily view our table contents much easier. Okay, it looks really nice, but I'm going to color it. That does look kind of nice. I'm going to color it white, though. The rest of the cells white, so we can get a nice table. Okay, we'll make these bold. Control B is going to do a quick way to bold. It's coming together nicely. This is going to be a formula. This is going to be the customer order number. Looks good. Now let's add in some buttons. I'm going to put some buttons. I also want to put a picture. So let's actually drag this over here. And I want to increase this table. I think I want a picture here as well. So let's do that. Let's put a picture in here. And I want a picture of that so we can also put a border around this too, because once we select an item, let me just go down so you can see it. I'm just right-clicking and formatting the cells if it's off the screen here. Adding the border, so that picture is going to go there. So when we select an item, equipment item from this table, the picture of the item is going to show up there, which is kind of a nice feature. Okay, that looks good. We can bring this over, just color the outside a little bit so it looks a little bit nicer. And color the outside a little bit so it looks nicer. I'm just going to copy, paste that down there, and bring this down here so that we get all the way around the table. Okay, so now we've got a nice, all the way around, it looks nice. Okay, so the look and feel of it is correct. Now I want to add some information in. I need to know whether this is a new order or not, new order. I also want to know the row of the order row. And I need to know the next order number, next order, because we're going to have to keep track of all the orders. And if the order is loading or not, order load. That means when it's load. What I want to do is when the user puts in an order number here, like 1, I want that order to load automatically. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So everything's going to come up. And I also want to know the selected row. That means the selected row in this table. When a user selects row, I want a few things to happen. I want that row to be highlighted, and I want to show the picture, if it's available, of the item right here. Makes it for really, really nice and really easily to look at. So we've got that, and let's color these accordingly just so they stand out, something different like this green. Now we've got that already set up. So what I want to do is I want to add some information. I also want to add some buttons on here. So let's add some buttons. Let's put in some nice big buttons. We're going to use a square button, something within the theme of the table, and I'm going to put in the buttons right here. All right, and let's size them accordingly. That's a little bit too big. 0.4, let's say, and then 1.6. We've got to put about 4 buttons in there total, but let's get that all. Let's put the shape. Let's use probably this one here. Looks nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that. Control D, Control D, Control D. 4 buttons. I want 4 buttons. And really only 3 buttons are going to show at any given time. So we can drag these down here. And then I'm going to put this one over here just for now. So we're going to have about 4 of those buttons. All right, and I've got some buttons I want to enter. So let's enter. I've got some saved up. I'm going to use all of these here. I've just saved them. So we're going to and then we're going to, let's just adjust the height to 0.3 or something like that. Something a little bit smaller and manageable. And one of them is actually the icon that I'm going to be using for the application, which is here. So let's bring this up, and I'm going to increase this a little bit so we can see a nice, okay, good. That looks very good. And let's change the font to something a little bit bigger and the color here so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so now we have a nice look, and now let's go ahead and place these on our buttons. So what do I want? I want a delete button here. I also want a save and update button. I want a cancel new button, and I want a new order button. Good. I also want to use a calendar pop-up. It's going to be really nice. So I'm going to reduce this down, and I want this basically to display inside this. We can make it a little bit bigger. Let's go with 0.17. And I want basically when a user clicks on this, I want the calendar to pop up, whether we're here, here, or here. So it's going to be in either one of those threes. So that's going to be really helpful. So let's get these buttons done and see what we can do. First one, let's call this new order. And on all of the buttons, I'm going to click them all, and I want to make them all right justified, although they're not all going to be, and in the middle. And then let's increase the font until we get something that we like. Make sure we got a white font, perfectly white, and maybe make this bold. There we go. That looks kind of nice. All right, so we've got that, and then maybe the font's a little bit too big there. I'll drop that down a little bit. Okay, and then we can center this actually. All right, so individually we'll have to space them out a little bit. Okay, so we got the new order, and then I want this, we're going to call this one save or update, save or update. And then this one's got a little bit of text, so we'll right justify that. And then I want delete, let's see, call this delete order. And we can right justify that one too, it's a little bit bigger text. And then the last one is going to be cancel new, and I only want this to appear up on new one. So cancel new, I only want this to appear on the new mode. Okay, and this is only going to appear, so basically it's either going to be cancel new or new order. So not both of those at the same time. So I'm going to hold down the control, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to group both of those, and I'm going to call this cancel new button. And I want this to be called new order button. So let's do the same thing here, control, and then we can also format and align those up to make sure they're aligned in the middle. And then I'm going to group them and give this a name. We're going to call this we'll call this add new button. And then I also want the save update here. So again, let's move this over here, center it, control, group it, and name it. We'll call this save update button. And then the last one, we're going to call this just the delete order button, again here. And then we're going to go ahead and line it up here, align the middle, and then group it, and then name it delete order button. Okay, we've got that done. Now we've got everything nicely. Let's just space it out accordingly. Holding down the control, I'm going to align the lefts, and then I'm going to distribute it vertically here. Now all our buttons, and I also want to place this cancel new. We're not going to show cancel new and new at the same time, so I'm going to place it on top of each other, and I'm going to send it to the back. Okay, so now we've got our buttons set up. We got new order, save order. Perfect, everything's looking really good. Now what we want to do is I want to add some named ranges for those. Those are really important, especially with customers. So let's go ahead and do that. In the customer name, I've got different customers, so I want to add a dynamic name range. So to do that, I'm going to go into the formulas, name manager, and you'll see two already. Those are based on the calendar, so those are pop-up calendar, and we use those. So we don't worry about those for now. We'll just focus on this. Customer name. Okay, and so what is it? I want to use an offset formula because it's dynamic. So I'm going to start out with offset. And I'm starting out in row 2 because that's the header, but we don't want to include that. But the reason we start out with the header is because when there's no data, it's going to not prevent an error. So start at an A2, comma, 1. 1 means one row down, comma, comma, count A. But I want to count all of the ones. What do I want to count? I want to count all of them, including, let's say, A through a large number like 999. That's going to count all the ones with text. But I want to subtract one, again, because we're using the first header row, which we don't want to include. So we're going to subtract 1, comma 1, means just one column. All right, tab out, tab back in. Make sure the dancing counts cover all the data as they do here, all the way from A3 to A7. We're good to go. So now we've got a customer name. Well, let's add more. I also want equipment name. We've got equipment. I want to do the same thing for equipment. So let's just highlight this again. Actually, we could probably highlight this. It's going to be a little bit quicker. Go into the name manager, new, and we'll call this one equipment name. Okay, and then again, we're going to start it off with offset, just like as we did before. And then open parentheses. And then what we're going to do is going to go to comma and then 1 again, comma, comma, count A. What are we counting? We're counting all the equipment with names in this list. Again, large number, 999, starting at the header, comma, -1 actually, -1, comma, and then 1 column. Tab out, tab back in. Looks like we're good. Okay, don't forget to download this if you want to see what I've done. You always have free downloads. Click OK. All right, good. Now one more. Let's do one more. I want to do order numbers. That's really important, even though we don't have any order numbers, order list, but we're going to. So let's just say 1, 2, 3. Put in some sample data right now. Hold Control this, And then name manager, again, new, one more, and we're going to call this order numbers. Same exact formula using offset. Offset is a great formula, but we're using very, very large ranges. You might want to use something like index, which is non-volatile. We're using small ranges, so it's okay. There's a small application. Keep in mind there's more than one way to do this, depending upon how much data you want and how big your application is. Offset, okay, comma, 1, comma, comma, count A. What are we counting? We're counting all the orders in this list all the way up to a large number, 999. Close parentheses, -1, not including the header, comma 1. Okay, tab out, tab in. Great, I know I moved fast over these, but we got a lot to cover. So you can always download this and see the formula exactly for yourself. You want to make sure the dancing ants cover the data. Okay, good. All right, great. So here's the idea. Let's go back into some formulas and start working on that. We've got a customer. I want this to be a drop-down list. So let's put that in a data validation. And then we're going to make it a list, and we want it to equal the named range we just created called equals customer name. Okay, great. So that's going to give us a drop-down list of all the customers, but we also need the row order number. So let's put in a row order. Now, what is the row of order number 1? It's going to be row 4. Why is that? Because our first one starts on 4. So I also need to know the row of that. So let's put that in. Equals, always if error in case there's an error. What do I want to do? I want to find a match. I want to match the formula. What am I looking up? I'm looking up the order number. What is the array? It's going to be order numbers. And I don't want an exact match, so it's going to be 0. But I don't want the first value. I want the first row. So our first row starts in 4, so we need to add 3, right? Because our first value starts in row 4. So comma, why are we commaing? Because if there's an error, what are we going to do? If there's an error, I want to double quotes. That's going to get us 4. If we change that to 2, it's going to get us 5. Perfect, that's what we want because order number 1 is in row 4. Perfect, and if there's no orders, then I just want it to be blank. See, no error, it's just blank. Perfect, that's exactly what I want. What do I want the next order to be? The next order, I want that to be using a max, so we can use the max. And if there are no orders, like in this case, there are no orders, I want it to just show up 1. So how do we do that? We can use if error equals if error. We're going to use max this time. Max of what? Max of the order numbers. But I not only want the maximum, I want 1 beyond that. So plus 1. So plus 1 beyond that. But what if there are no numbers? In that case, I want it to return 1, which would be the first available in case there's an error. So it's going to do 1. Now, as soon as I change this to the order list, as soon as I count 1, 2, 3, that next order number is going to automatically go to 4, which is exactly what I want. So it's the maximum, which is 3. Plus 1, which is 4. Okay, this is going to be a true or false, so we'll Boolean, so we can select that. And I also want to know the selected row and add conditional formatting. So for example, if the selected row is 13, I want to highlight that row based on this row. We can do that through conditional formatting. If we highlight all the rows and add a conditional formatting rule and create a new rule, and then use the formula to create that, we can do equals, what is it going to be equal? Whatever's in B7, and then equals row, open and close parentheses, row, open and close parentheses. Now I want to format that very different than what it is. So I'll just use a contrasting color. Let's go into fill effects and use a very contrasting color. We'll use this, and then what I'll do is I'll use a bold font, so like this, and I'll use a white font. That'll stand out, bold and white, and it's going to stand out a lot. Okay, good. So now we've got that. So now if we type in equipment name, good. All right, but let's do that. Let's type in some equipment names. In fact, I want a drop-down list here, just as we did for the customer. So we'll drop that down, and I'm going to data validation here. I want to create a list, and the list based on the equipment name. So equals, we just created equipment name. Click OK, and that's going to give us a drop-down list. Perfect. Okay, so now we enter. But when I enter this equipment name, I actually want to show the description, the status, and the daily rate. We have all that we have the description, we have the status, and we have the daily rate. So I want that information to appear. But the best way to get that information to appear is we need to know the row number it's on. In fact, this is on row 3 and 4. So how do we get that? Well, we can use the same type of a match formula using our if error. So I'm going to put a formula right here, and eventually you can hide the results just by changing the font color. Equals if error. We're going to use a match. What are we matching? I'm going to match up whatever's in D13, and then I'm going to match it based on the equipment name, comma 0. I want an exact match. And so again, I want the row. What is the row? It's going to be +2 in this case, +2, +2, because the first one's going to be on row 4, I think. I'll check that in a second. Comma, what if it's an error? Ending parentheses. Okay, so air compressor is on row 4. Let's take a look. Air compressor is on row 4 because our first row starts in 3 in this case. That's why we added 2. Perfect. Okay, that's what I want. Let's go back. So we've got that, and we can just drag that all the way down there, and it's going to provide a blank because there's an error. But as soon as we add something on the first row, it's going to provide the error. Now, if you want to hide these, which you probably do on yours, just go into Home and then change the font to the existing color, to the background color. That's going to hide it, which is great. But for our purposes, I want you to see it so we can continue on. And we're going to write some additional code very soon. That's going to put in the description, status, and the daily rate. All right, very nice. I also want a pop-up calendar. When you use the selects here, I want this little icon to appear here. So let's give this icon a name. And why don't we call this Cal icon? So now it's got a little name so we can refer to it within the code. And I want to format these based on the currency. So we're going to click currency symbol. That is what I want to format these as a long date. So we can format those long date here. And this one's going to be a short date. All right, it's coming together. We've got a customer list now. We've got an order number. We've got the format. So if we put in a format here, perfect. What do I want this to be? I want this to be the total of what is in here. We're going to put a formula in here. So let's write that now. Equals sum of what? And sum of all the totals here. All right, great. So we have the sum. And what is this? This is the amount due is going to be equal whatever the total is. So if we add, let's just say 150, and we're going to also format this as a currency. Good. So now we have this. So now I want to know the total amount due is equal to the total rental price minus the payments. All right, great. So as soon as we enter a payment in here, it's going to show the amount. Perfect. So now we're getting there. We're getting a lot closer now. All right, let's get onto that calendar. Let's change this to returned on, make it a little more clear. So let's get into that calendar. I have a pop-up calendar here that I created. This is a shape-based calendar. It's really cool. I'm going to copy this, Control-C. I'm going to place it on this order sheet here. I only want it to really appear when the user selected. I'm going to change the color, several colors here, anything that we like. We could probably go with this blue here. That's kind of close to what we want. Okay, so basically what I want this calendar to do is when I click this icon, I want it to pop up, and I want this calendar to hide otherwise. So let's write some code to do that right now. It's a great little calendar, and let's work on that. So we're going to go into the VBA to start working on our VBA and get this application created. It's going to be amazing. So into the Developers tab, if you don't have the Developers tab, you can go into the File and the Options, and you can find that Developers tab in the Customize, clicking right here on that checkbox. You can also use a shortcut Alt F11 to get you in there. I do have some code. This is a pop-up calendar. This is the code that runs the calendar. That's the only code that I have on there. And you can take a look at that, but we're going to focus on something different today. We're going to focus code on sheet, and I'm going to be creating a lot of other macros, but this pop-up is just to run the calendar. Okay, so let's take a look at it. What do we want to do? Well, the first thing what I want to do is when I select on certain cells, I want this calendar, this icon to pop up. Well, what cells are those? Those are going to be cells E6, E8, and E10. So let's write some code to get that calendar to display, that little icon here, display, and I want it to display only when you click on those cells. Otherwise, I want it hidden. So we can use selection change. So we're going to click on Worksheet, selection change. So we're going to write code in here. Now, if the user makes a change to one of those, we want it to happen. So let's also write some code to prevent some errors. So I'm going to write if target dot count large is greater than, let's use just 10, then exit sub. And what that's going to do is going to prevent errors when user selects on a large range of cells. So that helps remove some bugs. That's just something I write quite often. Okay, so we're going to focus on selection change. So first thing I want to do is I want to write if not intersection. Now I wrote that code automatically and very quickly because it's part of AutoHotkey. That's a software that helps me write code very fast. And it's also free on the internet called AutoHotkey. You can download it yourself. E6, of course, is what we're going to be focusing on, along with E8 and E10. When a user makes a selection on one of these three cells, I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? I want to have that pop-up calendar show up. Then I want it to show up. So what do I want to do? Let's just write some notes so we know exactly what we're doing. On selection of date field, display calendar icon. Okay, So we're going to know what we're doing there. So when user selects that, then what do I want to do? I want to say with shapes, right? With shapes. We've already named it 𝐾𝐜. We've given it that name, so let's refer to it 𝐾𝐜. What do we want to do with that? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to display it based on I want to position it. So dot left to position it. And I don't want to place it inside the cell. I want to place it actually, what I want to do is I want to place it on the cell to the right. So I really want to place it right here. And then what I want to do is I want to move it over a little bit here. So placing it to the cell to the right ensures that it's always going to be on the, don't worry about that, it's always going to be on the inside, just on the inside of it, okay? So we want to first place it on the cell to the right. So we can do that by continuing with our code. Dot left, let's reset the code, that wasn't finished. What is it? It equals, the target is the cell that they're selecting, but not, I don't want the exact target, I want the cell to the right. So we can use offset for that. I don't want any row offset. It's not going to go row above or row below. It's going to stay in the same row, so we're going to keep that 0. But I do want a column offset, column to the right. 1 plus 1 is going to be a column to the right. -1 would be a column to the left. Dot left. I'm going to do the same thing with the top property. Dot top, again, equals target dot offset, again, no rows, up or down, 0, comma 1, 1 column, and then dot top. But I don't want it exactly on the right. I actually want to bring it over a little bit to the left. So we can do dot increment left and then -16, about 16, because the icon's about 16 pixels, give or take. So I want it to move it to the left. And I don't want it exactly on the top, so I'm going to move it down a little bit using increment top. To move it down, we go 1. So in this case, down would be top. Let's just say 1. And the last thing I do, I've used those 4 lines to position it exactly where I want, but I've actually haven't made it visible yet. So we can make it visible with this line of code. Dot visible equals MSO true. Okay, so great. So if the user selects on anything, it's going to make it visible. But what if they don't? What if they select outside? If they select outside, in that case, else, what do I want to do? Else, I want to hide it. Shapes. Again, 𝐾𝐜 dot visible equals MSO false. So this is going to hide it. So if they select anything else, it's going to hide it. And then I also want to run the macro. Now I have a macro called calendar hide and calendar show. This is always here. So calendar hide, this is going to hide. I run a macro because it clears it. So we can do that. That hides that pop-up calendar. So I'm going to copy that macro. And then I'm going to go right in here. I'm just going to write in calendar hide. So perfect. Remember, we only want to, I'm going to run the macro. This macro, calendar show, which is going to display the calendar, but I only want to run this macro when they click on that icon. So I'm going to copy that, calendar show. That's a complicated macro. We're not going to go into it today because we're just going to focus on the orders, but I do have a training on that as well. You can find out calendars on my YouTube channel. You can find a few on that. One called 3 calendars where I show you 3 different calendars, so I've got a lot. So I want to assign a macro to this little pop-up. Click assign macro. I'm going to paste in that macro called calendar show. Now let's see, when I click on here, let's find out and show it's not showing up. Let's see what we did. Okay, so when we select the order sheet and when you make a selection, cal icon dot visible, we need to make this true. See, true. Okay, now we got it, wrong one. Okay, so now it's going to show up. That's exactly what I wanted. It shows up exactly where I want it to show up. And then when I click it, I want it to show that calendar. Perfect. When I click off it, if I click in it, outside of it, it's going to hide the calendar, show it. That's exactly what I want. When I click the date, it's going to show a date. When I click it, we'll be able to show a date. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Okay, just to review, we want to make sure we're showing visible equals true, not false, obviously. And then false would be to hide it. Great, so now we've got our calendar feature. Let's write additional code. So I also want to load the item. Remember when we change this, I want to load this item here. So that's on change event. So let's write some code for that. Meaning we're actually going to make a change, not a selection, but we're actually making a change. I want the description, status, and the daily rate to show up. And I wanted to pull it from this equipment here. The description, the status, and the daily rate. We're going to pull that out. So how do we do that? Well, okay, let's take a look. Let's format this. I think we didn't format this as a currency yet, so we can do that. All right, let's do that. And that's on change events. So what do I want to do? We've got worksheet, but this one's changed. So we're going to click change. When a user makes a change to a cell inside a worksheet, something's going to happen. Well, what do we want to happen? I only want it to happen on specific changes. One, what are the changes? Few things. One, I want it to only show up when we make a change to anywhere between D13 and D26. So let's write that code, D13. If not, range is nothing, then what do we want to do? Again, let's change this to D13 through D26. That's the change. So if they make a change, then that's what I want to happen. But I also want to make sure a few other things for sure. I want to load it only on a few other things. What is those other things? I want to make sure that we're not loading the order. Remember, when we're loading the order, all the information is going to come from here. Equipment name and description is going to come from here. So I only want to load it when we're not loading. What I mean by that? So if I've saved this order, if I've already saved this order, all this information is going to come from all of our order items here. But if it's a new order, or if it's an existing order and we're adding on to it, in that case, the order load would be false. So I want to make sure B6 is false. So that means as we add it on existing, not when we're loading it, not when we're loading a previous one, two different kinds of change. We need to specify and differentiate between those two types of changes. So how can we do that? We just want to make sure that B6 is false. So we're going to add an and range B6 dot value equals false. And I also want to make sure that the kind of change is there's actually a value. I want to make sure that the target, there's an actual value. So and range D and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty, right? If the kind of changes where they're deleting something, that we can't load it. So we have to make sure that equals it, and we want to make sure. All right, so then what do I want to do? Then I want to run a macro that's going to load the equipment. So we're going to write a macro right now, then equipment load. Equipment load. That's going to be a brand new macro that we're going to write right now. So I'm going to copy this to make sure we have the name. So we're going to do all that. The macro doesn't exist yet, but we're going to write it right now. So that's going to load our equipment. Let's bring this over here and open this up a little bit so you can see more of the code, okay? So now you can see all the code. So then we're going to load equipment. So there's three conditions. The user makes a change to D26. It's not on load, meaning you're not loading the order from a previously saved. And we want to make sure that they're actually entering a value. It does not equal empty. So when those three conditions are met, we're going to run a macro. So let's create that macro now. But to do that, we need to actually create a module. So we're going to right click anywhere, insert a module. And what I want to do is I want to create a load module. Let's just call this load orders or load anything we want. So I'm going to hold down the properties here, click on that, and then just call this load order max. Okay, and to do that, let's go ahead and write something sub, and then I'm going to paste in that macro name that I just created. So here's the macro. So now let's start writing this macro. In this macro, we're really going to need two variables. What I mean, I need to know the selected row, the row they've selected, and I also need to know the equipment row. The equipment row is based on the selected row. Is the equipment row 3 or 5, or where's the equipment? Because I've got to know if I'm going to load in the information, if I'm going to bring in the description, the status, and the rate, I need to know what row is it on, 3, 4, 5, or 6. But I also need to know the row the user has selected. What row are they currently on? That's important. So we're going to define both of those into variables. So we can do this. Dimension the selected row as long, and also the equipment row. That's good. And also, of course, I want to actually display the picture too, because that's nice. So I'm going to dimension the picture path as a string. That's the path of the picture. Now I have that picture path, and it's saved right here based on my desktop, based on this information right here. So it's all here. So make sure you have your pictures too. And make sure this path is correct. You want to make sure it's a correct path to the pictures. All right, so I also wanted that so that I can load in the picture. As soon as I load it in, I want the picture to display right here in this box right here. So how do we get that? Let's continue on with our macro. Of course, we're focused really with sheet 1, so with sheet 1. And then we can continue on. I want to make sure that B7 does not equal value. If we have to, of course, we need really two things. In order to load our row, we need the selected row. That can't be blank. And of course, we also need the equipment row. We need to run checks to make sure both of those. So we can start out with the selected row. If dot range B7 equals empty equals empty, then exit sub. Nothing we can do, we can't load anything unless they've actually selected a row. Also, now we can define the selected row. Selected, because it's not empty, so now we can continue on. Selected row, and what does it equal? It equals B7 right here. So we can just copy and paste that, save a little time, equals B7, and we'll just call that selected row. Always good to comment out. Once we have the selected row, we can then define the equipment row. Why is that? Because the equipment row is located in column C. Equipment row is equal to dot range C and the selected row. And I'll show you that in just a second. Selected row, and that's the equipment row. Equipment. Okay, so we've got that. Of course, it's C in the equipment row, which is right here. C in the equipment row. That's going to be our row. So we know that. Now we can define that. We also want to make sure that that's not blank, because if it is, we can't load anything. So we can do if equipment row equals 0, then exit sub. Just in case they enter wrong, we can't do anything on that, just in case. All right, so now that we have that, now what we can do is we can bring in over the data. So dot range, E is the first column. We've already loaded D because that's the name. E is our description. E and what? E in the selected row, and what else? And parentheses colon all the way over to G and the selected row equals, what does it equal? Let's just go over that. E through G equals equipment B through D. So, and that's on the equipment sheet. So what is the equipment sheet? Well, that equipment sheet is located right here. If we can see that, equipment sheet is sheet 2 right here. So we know that, so we can move on. Equals, let's close this, we don't need this anymore. Sheet 2 dot range B, because B is the second, we have the name in column A, and B is the description. B and colon all the way through, in this case it's going to be D, and the equipment B and the equipment row all the way through, and colon and D and the equipment row. Okay, let's just take a quick look at that. E and the selected row through G in the selected row equals sheet 2, B in the equipment row, and D in the equipment row dot value. It's going to bring over all the information dot value. Okay, so that would be the description, that would be the status, and the rate. Okay, let's take a quick look at that to confirm, double check we're on the right page here. Description, status, and the rate. Bring that over there, B through D. All right, okay, so now we're good to go. And let's take a look. What else do we need to write? Now we're going to write the picture, but let's just take a look at that and see where we are now to make sure we're in the right place. Let's just double click on that. We don't need the end if because we have the macro right here. Right, we don't need this because we have it right here. So we don't need an end if. It's all in one line. We could just remove that. If it's all in one line, you don't need to know. But if we were going to be doing something, we would use it, we could do this as well. Let me just show you what it would look like if we didn't have it. If we wanted to keep that end if, we would have to do enter, and then we would do end if. That would work also, okay? So we can do either one of those. Let's keep it this, it saves a little more space. Both are the same. Okay, so let's double click on this, and then now we have the description, the status, and the daily rate. Perfect. Okay, so but I also need the duration. That's really important. What is the duration? Well, the duration is going to be basically whatever is equal to what's in G. So, and what is the duration? Let's put a formula in the duration. The duration is going to basically be if we have a returned on date, if we have a returned on, then duration is going to be the returned on date minus the rented out date. But what if there's no return date? In that case, what I want it to be, the duration is going to be the expected return date minus the rent out date. So we can write some code here. So equals if, and then I want to do an and. Why and? Because I want to make sure that two of these have a value. If and returned on date does not equal blank. And what else? And our rent out date does not equal blank. Let's write that up here so it's a little bit easier. So if and E10 is not equal blank and E6 is not equal blank, then what do I want to do? Then what I want to do is I want to just basically say E10 minus E6, right? In case there's no blank. Otherwise what? Otherwise what? I want to do another one. I want to make sure if another and expected return on date does not equal empty. And what else? And also again, rent out date does not equal empty. If those two does not equal empty, if those two are okay, in that case, then I want to do our return on date minus our rent out date. Otherwise blank, right? Otherwise, if case one of those is blank, so let's take a look at that. And now we just added an additional parentheses. So it's 2, great. But what if, okay, so our expected returned on date is going to be, but what if we come back and we return it on the 9th? Then I want this to go to 3. You see how that works? So basically, when this is empty, it's going to assume that it's going to be on 2 days. But what if this is empty? If they're both empty, then I want it to be blank. That's exactly what I want. And then I'll just put in something like, actually, let's write some code. Let's add in here. What I want to do is, let's say it's on 1 day. I want to make this actually 1, because if we're renting it out on the same day, I do want to add 1 to this. So let's just do that, plus 1, because generally in a rental, if you rent it out for 1 day from the same day, it's going to be considered 1. So let's add 1 to both of those formulas here. Both of those, I'm going to add 1, because generally both the day you rent it on and the day you return it on is considered 1. So in this case, if we rent it out on the same day, because it shouldn't be 0, it should be at least 1. Okay, great. So we have that. But what about the days? Equals, I want to write equals if this is less than 2, then what I want, day. Otherwise, put in days. There we go. Now we have 2. So 1 day, or if we can change this to 2 days. Perfect. Okay, and if it changes this, 3 days, 4 days, whatever. Okay, great. So now what I want the duration to be always on this. So equals duration. That's what I want. And of course, we're going to use F4 because I want the absolute when I drag it down. So now it's going to be 4. So now, but I only want the duration to show up if we have a daily rate. Otherwise, I don't want it to show up. Equals if, and then I'm going to drag this daily rate does not equal empty, then what I want to do, then I want to show G10. Otherwise, empty. So we understand, so that we're only showing the duration for the rows that have a value. So right click, copy, and then I'm going to paste this all the way down. Paste and paste formulas. Nice, okay, and then this one, we want to do this one as well. This one equals, I want to make sure this one I add a formula, equals, there's 2 conditions in this. If there's a daily rate and a duration, then in that case, I want it to show equals if, and 2 conditions, daily rate does not equal empty, and the duration does not equal empty. And that would be H13. H13 does not equal empty. In that case, what do I want to do? In that case, I want to do G13 times H13, the daily rate times the duration, times duration, H13. Perfect. Otherwise, if those conditions are not met, leave it blank. Okay, great. So now we have 4 times 2. Now I'm going to copy this formula down. I'm going to paste it all the way down. Paste formula. Okay, great. So our formula's working, but now what I want to do is I also want to update B13 based on the selected row. So let's write some code. So as we select a row, I want B7 to change. So let's go back into the code, and this is going to be back into the selection change right here. And what I want to do, I want to write some code. If not, the user makes it, then what I want to do is I want to show that row. If they make a selection change, to what is the selection change? In this case, it's going to be anywhere from D13 all the way through I26. So we can write some code, D13 through I26. Then what do I want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that B7 is updated. Range B7 dot value equals target row. Okay, so let's select on different rows here. Now we got it. Now, all right. So now we've got it. Now we understand that we're selecting on different rows. So let's select on this and let's load this. And let's try another one. We got that. All right, so now our loading, our duration is automatically, let's center this so it looks a little bit better. And now we've got our totals, and our totals are already updating. Perfect. It's looking really, really good. What do I want to do now? I want to save this order. I want to make sure everything is saved exactly one. And I also want to load the picture. So let's load the picture in. Let's continue with the load and load the picture in, because I think we want to do that. So we're going to continue. We have the work order loading, but I still, when we add a specific equipment, I want to add the picture of that and display that so it looks really nice. So how do we do that? Well, we know that the picture path, we're going to define it. Where do we know it? We know the equipment row. We know what row is, but now all we need to do is get the picture path, and it's going to locate it in E. So let's do that right now. But we can write a different macro, because why do I want to write a different macro? I want to write a different macro because I want this picture to load in a few different ways. One, when we're adding into it, and one when we select on it. So for example, if I select, I want that picture to load here. on the right side. If I add a new item, I also want the picture to load. So in those two instances, I want the picture to load. So I'm going to write a separate macro for that. So let's go ahead and write that right now. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to add that macro to right here. So we can do that here. So let's write in sub equipment load pick. Okay, so again, to mention we can actually copy this because it's going to be pretty much, we don't need the picture path here. We need it actually, let's copy this and I'm going to bring it down here and then I'm going to get rid of the picture path. We don't need it here. We're going to use it down here though. So we do need it down here, so that's important. All right, so let's get into that with sheet 1. Always going to be focused on sheet 1 for the most part for this training. And then I want to remove any picture. First of all, because if we're loading it, we could have an old picture there. So the first thing we want to do is remove any picture. But if the picture doesn't exist, it could create an error. So the best thing to do is start out with on air resume next. And then dot shapes, because we're already focused on sheet 1. I'm going to call it equipment pick. And then dot delete. So if there's any existing equipment picture from any other equipment, we want to delete it first. And then on air go to 0. So that's going to go, so that way it'll end up, that just deletes the picture if it exists. So that's a good way to start. All right, now that we've deleted any picture, now we want to make sure that, of course, we want to make sure that B7 does have a selector row. So I'm going to copy this here. Since I want to redefine the equipment, I'm going to actually copy all of this here and bring it down here. We're going to do the same things. Again, I want to define all that, the equipment row. So we've got that. It's just quick, easier. So now what I want to do is I want to define the picture path. So the picture path is where we know it's on sheet equals sheet 2 dot range E in the equipment row, E and the equipment row dot value. And that's the picture path, So we have the picture path defined now, but we do need to make sure that it actually is going to lead to the correct path, right? Because it could be it could be from another computer, could be issues if there's not a specific and proper path. So let's write some additional code. So on air resume next, I want to check that picture path. If we can do that with directory, if directory of the picture path and then VB directory equals, or we can just use does not equal, that's probably good, does not equal empty, then what? Then we know the picture path exists, and if. Then we know it exists. So picture path exists. So now we know it exists. Now we can write some code to display that picture. So with dot pictures dot insert, and what are we inserting? Picture path. Path. Okay, so we're going to insert that picture. We want to insert it, but what do I want to do with it? Then once it's inserted, I want to define it. So with dot shape range, that's the picture itself that we're focused on. I want to do a few things. I want to lock the aspect range, lock aspect ratio, because I want it to show up, equals MSO true. And what else? I want to set the height, dot height equals about 150, right? So I want to make sure we're probably about 150. And then I want to set a specific name. That name is very important, so we know it's always going to have the same name. Dot name is equal to, again, equipment path. Equipment. And I want to set a name. Make sure we have a specific name, equipment picture. That's the same name that we deleted up there. It's always going to be the same name. So we're going to set that name. Okay, great. So now that we're done with that, we can move on. Okay, so we're done with the pictures. So now we can refer to it by name. So we can do something like with dot shapes, and then we know the shape name, equipment, because we've already named it, equipment pick. Now I want to display it, right? And I want to display it in a specific location. So dot left, where do I want to display it? I want to display it right about here, right in J13. So let's write some code to do that. Dot left equals sheet 1. We have to specify the sheet again because we're on shapes, so that's really important. Remember, we're on with shapes, so we always need to specify it again. Shapes range J13. Dot left. And we want to do the same thing for top. So we can just copy that again to make it a little bit quicker. And then dot top equals sheet 1 j3.top. Okay, so good. Now it's going to be the top left, but we want to bring it down and bring it a little bit to the right. If I just left it right there, it'd be hugging this border right here. I want to bring it down a little bit, and I want to bring it to the right. So we can use increment for that. So dot increment left, I want to move it to the right, so it's a positive. So in this case, dot increment left would be probably about 5. And then dot increment top, which is down here, I want to move it again. I probably down a little bit, maybe about 5. And the last thing I want to do is make it visible. Dot visible equals MSO true. Okay, perfect. There we go. And then I'm just going to right here, let's take a look. I think we're good to go. And if let's test out the code, fix any bugs that we might have, and then we can move on. So what I want to do is I want to load this, but I also want to run this macro right when we're adding an equipment and when we select on the line. So I want to load the picture when we select. So let's copy this and bring it the order sheet. Remember, what we're doing is we're adding the target row. Remember, if we select inside a range, I want to also add the picture when we select on something. So I'm going to write that. So not only do we want to put the row, I want to put the picture there too. I want to load that. So let's take a look and fix any issues that we might have. Variable not defined. Equipment, I got to fix the spelling on that. Okay, continue on with the code. All right, looks good here. Perfect. So now we have the picture right where we want it. We could probably move it over to the right a little bit. It looks a little bit to the left. So let's move it over to the right a little bit. To do that, just add left. Let's make that 15. Now it's kind of more centered. I like that a little bit better. Okay, good. So it works when we select, but what about when we add a new item? Let's fix this, debug. Now we want to make sure the equipment row C, we can't add an equipment picture unless there's no value. So let's write that code there. So let's add some caveat here. So let's go back into the order sheet. Remember, we can't load this picture unless there's actually a value in C, right? C must have a value. So we want to make sure if range C and the target dot row dot value does not equal blank, right? We can only add then load the picture, right? We can't do it if their C doesn't contain a value. So we can do that right here. So now when we load a line, it doesn't work. Only when C contains a value. So I like that much better. Okay, so let's save our work. It's always important. And add in a new one. Make sure it's working okay. Portable generator. That doesn't look like a portable generator to me. Forklift, okay, that looks good. Light tower, that looks good. Okay, perfect. All right, everything looks good, except this is not the right picture, but that's okay. Don't tell anybody. Just don't tell anybody, okay? All right, the boom lift, everything else looks really good. So now we've got our information. Now what I want to do is I really want to start saving this. When I click save, I want all this information to display here on the orders. In fact, we can remove these temporary orders. We want our new order to be 1. So we want this to be 1, and then of course our next one. So I want to save this information here, and I want to save the items, the order items here in this sheet. So let's write some code to do that. It's going to call it save update. We're going to use the same macro whether we're updating a brand new order, whether we're updating an existing order, or we're saving a new order. So let's write some code on that now. Okay, so back into the VBA editor we go. We're going to create a brand new module. So we're going to right click anywhere here, insert module, and I'll give it a module name. I always want to name our module so we can differentiate between, we know what's inside. Let's just call it order save update max. Okay, once it's named, we can close this properties. We don't need that anymore. And then let's go ahead and write our first macro for saving, sub order. Again, this is going to be both for save and update. So save update. That's good enough for a macro name. And we're going to dimension some variables here. Dimension, I want to know the order row, so that's very important, as long. I also want to know the order column. We're going to use data mapping on that, and I'll show you what that is. Order column as long. And I want to know the last item row, If we're going to be adding items, why do we need that? Why is that important? The last item row, all of our items, right? All of these items are going to be saved in a different table. What table is that? It's going to be called order items. So if it's a new item, I need to know what's the last row, and then I'm going to add more rows. So that's very important. If it's an existing item, we'll just update the existing item. In fact, let's go ahead and do the data mapping right now. Let's take a look at the order list. I want to, I've already data mapped it, but I'm going to delete it because I want to show you. Well, I'll just show you. It's easier because this video is long enough. What we're going to do is we're going to take a screenshot of this, and I'm going to show you exactly how I'm taking a screenshot using my screen software. It's already updated because from a previous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this from my Snagit software, and I'm going to paste it right back into the application, just temporarily, but I'm going to paste it in right here. This is going to help us map the data. It's already been mapped for us because I did this previously, so it can make it a little bit quicker. So the idea is, what I want to do is order number. I need to know what cell that is. If we look, it's G4. I need to know what customer that is. If we look at the customer here on the screenshot, look at its E4. Order date, right, is going to be located right here. It's in G6. So that's a data mapping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these columns, each of these cells, starting with 1 and going all the way to what? Well, column equals column. I want to know what's the last column to go to when we're saving it. 8, column 8. So great. So we're going to go from 1 through 8, and we're going to take all this information based on this cell and put it in the row. So we know the row, we know the cell. So that's data mapping. It helps us map data from this form and bring it into this database with just a few lines of code. All right, now that we use it, I'm going to go ahead and delete this screenshot, but that's going to help. So when you want to create your data mapping, save the first row and make sure you're mapping like the expected return date on E8 must be the expected return date. E8. Okay, it's always mapped, and that's going to really help us write some code. So I'll show you in the code how that's so much easier. Okay, so let's go into it. So we've got the last item row as long. Also, I've got a few more. So let's go dimension the item database row. I need to know what row we're focused on the item as long, because we're going to go through the rows and update those. Item row. I need to know what item row. Why do we need to know the item row? I need to know as we're going through these items, we're going to be saving all these items. I need to know what item row. Is it 13, 14, 15? We're going to go through all these rows. I also need to know the last item row. So that's really important as we run through them. So let's go ahead and put that in. And then we also want to know the equipment row. Equipment row as long. Okay, so now we've got all those dimensions. Now we're going to focus on with sheet 1 as we will. Okay, and what do we want to do? First, I want to make sure that we put some required fields. We can't save this. At least let's put a few required fields. I'm going to make E4. We got to have a customer, and we definitely need to have G4. Those are the minimum. I'm probably going to need more than that, but for our purposes, we'll keep it simple. E4 and G4, those cannot be blank. So let's write some code to make sure. If dot range E4 dot value equals empty, or dot range G4 equals empty, then what? Then let the user know. Message box, please fill in the required fields. And then you can just put some more text in there, but that's okay. Exit sub. That's okay for our purposes. At least they can't move on without at least entering those two required fields, order date. Order number should be automated generally, but we'll keep that in mind. Okay, next up, we're ready to continue. Next up, we want to make sure, we need to differentiate. We need to know, is it's a new order or is it an existing order? Because you can use the same button, the same macro for both existing and new orders. You know what? I don't like the bold on this. Let's just format that. I'm not loving that because it's hard. It looks a little bit blurry if it's bold. So let's just highlight those and then change those out to bold. Okay, it looks a little bit better. Okay, so it looks more clear. Now that we can see, so we want to know, is this an existing or new records? Because I don't know. So we use that based on whatever B3 is. B3 is going to tell us if it's a new order or not. In this case, this is our first one. So we're going to set that to true. Our first order is true. So it's a new order. So we need to know that, because why do I need to know that? Because if it's an existing order, we're going to update the existing row. If it's a new order, we're going to add a new row. So we need to know that based on the order row. So we can continue on with the code, but first we need to differentiate that. So if dot range B4 dot value equals, actually we can use B4, we have two options here. If the order row, remember the order row is going to be empty because it's not found. So we can use B4, I guess, as empty, or we can use B3 as true. Both would work, either one. We'll use B4 just in case. So if B4 is empty, it also means it's a new order. Two different ways. B4 dot value equals empty, then it's a new order, then new order. Okay, and then we'll add an else here too if it's an existing order. Else existing order. Okay, so what if it's a new order? So if it's a new order, we need to get the order row. So the first thing we want to do is order row is going to be equal to sheet 4. Remember, sheet 4 is our order list here. So sheet 4 dot range A, and then let's go use a high row, 99, dot end, XLF, dot row. That's going to give us our last row with the value, but I want to add +1. It's going to give us our first available row. Okay, so now that we have our first available row, we're good to go. But what if it's existing? Well, if it's existing, our order row is really in B4, right? B4 contracts. If it's empty, it's going to be new. If it's existing, so our order row is equal to B4, existing order row, right? Okay, good. So for example, just so we know we're on the same page, so what if we have an order in here and our order is 1? That's going to tell us that order 1 is in row B4. So we would know that it's in order row is automatically changed to 4. You see how that is? Because of our formula. But right now we don't have any order, so I'm going to delete that and make sure that we create a new order. So that's how we can use B4. If it's blank, it's a new order. If not, hopefully I've made myself clear on that. Now we're ready to go. Now what I want to do is I want to basically take all the data in this form, all of that here, and pretty much bring it right into this here. And we can use our data mapping for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a loop from column 1 all the way to column 8 and basically take whatever's in sheet 1 G4 and put it here. Take whatever's in sheet 1 E4 and put it here, and so on and so forth throughout. So we can use that with a loop. So we can add this loop now. For order column equals 1 to 8. And let's close our loop. Next order column. Make sure we close and open in the same. That prevents bugs. So what are we going to do? Sheet 4, that's our orders, dot cells. Why are we using dot cells? Because both the row and the column are dynamic and they're variables, so we want to use cells in this case. Order row, we know the order row, we've defined it whether it's new or existing. And then the order column, that's going to be our loop, order column, dot value equals, what does it equal? It equals whatever's in sheet 1, so dot range, right? We're already on sheet 1. But what is the cell? I need to know the cell. What is the cell? Well, the cell, where is it located? That cell is located right here, or right here, or right here, or right here. Always in row 1, but it's the columns are differentiating. So let's do the row. The cell is actually in sheet 4. So the row is in sheet 4 dot cells. Where is it? It's in row 1, and then it's in the column, order column. That's what we're going to find that cell, so we know. All right, and that's data mapping. That's all we need to do. So we just need to add in dot value here, and we have it. So bring in order details to order list. And that's going to bring it all in just with the 3 lines of code. So we've taken 8 lines of code and dropped it down to 4 lines of code. If you have a large database, you're going to take 20 or 30 lines of code and bring it down to 3 lines of code just with a simple data mapping, just by mapping it out. All right, so now that we have that, what we want to do is I want to add the update. So we've already taken care of, with the code, we just added all the information here and we brought it in. So what else do I want to do? Now what I want to do is I want to take all the information here and I want to bring it into our order items list. But what's important is I need to know whether it's an existing item, like since we're using this button to both save and update, I need to know if these items are existing, if they've already been added on this order. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to store the row number in column K. What is that row number? If we look in the order items, I'm going to store row 3, row 4, row 5. I'm going to put that, if it's existing, if it's saved already, I'm going to put that in here. So we can use that. If K is blank, right? If K is blank, then that means this item has not been added here, so we should add it. But if it's existing, if the existing, use this row. So use the row that's here or use a new row. So we can just use an if-then statement to determine. So first we're going to write some notes. Add items to item list. It's called order item list. So we know that's been previously saved. So though, first of all, I need to know the last item row. We're going to loop through all the items. I'm going to loop through all the items. So I need to know the last row. In this case, it's 18, but we're going to start out with D26. So let's do that. So last item row equals dot range D26, and then dot end XLF, dot end XLF, XLF. It's going to give us the last dot row. That's going to give us the last item row, because we need to loop through those items starting in row 13 and going all the way to the last item row. Starting in row 13 and going all the way to the last, in this case it's 18. So let's do that. Let's continue on, and now what we have here is the last. Let's bring this back up. All right, so let's continue on. So now we're ready for our loop. For the item row, we've already defined it up, equals 13 to last item row. And then close our loop, next item row. What do we want to do in this? The first thing I want to check, is it existing or is it new? And we can do that with this one. So the first thing, but before I do that, I actually want to update the status. Remember, if we want to check the status, I want to update the status. I need to know if it's rented or available. That's very important. So if this contains a value, if E10 contains a value, that means that everything in here is available. It's been returned. It's all been returned. So I want to make sure it shows available. But what if this is empty? If E10 is empty, that means it's still rented, right? So I want to make sure we update that. So let's do that now. So we can do that with this. If .range E10 .value does not equal empty, then what? Then what I want to do is I want to update everything. Sheet 2, back on sheet 2, .range C in the equipment row, and the equipment row .value equals available. Okay, so let me just show you what we're doing on that. Assuming that this has been returned, everything's been returned, what I need to do is I need to find the equipment row. In this case, it's C13, and I want to make sure that we update it and showing in the equipment list, changing the status to available because it's been returned. So we can do that with just this line of code. So it says if E10 does not equal empty, that means it's been returned. Update sheet 2 in the equipment row has now been empty. So we do need to I got to define the equipment row. Almost forgot that. Equipment row, of course, equals .range C and, right? See, our equipment row is C in the item row. That's the equipment row. Because we need to know what row, equipment row. Just so I'm going to go over with you again, just so I don't confuse you. Our equipment row is here, right? So if I know that it's been returned, I'm going to go into row 6 of our equipment. I'm going to go into row 6 and update this to available. But what if it's not returned? If it's not returned, I want to update this to rented. So let's write that part of the code right now. Available. Else then, okay, right? If then available. Else, when then it's not rented. Then in that case, I want to make it rented. So I'm going to take this else and paste it in here and change this to rented. Okay, so it's either available or rented based on whether it's been returned or not. Rented. Okay, so we've got that line of code. We're updating that. Let's just take a look at that. If E10 does not equal empty, sheet 2 equals available, else sheet 2 C and equipment row equals rented. Okay, very good. We got that. We can shrink this up here so we can give you more space to look. All right, so now we've got that done. So we understand that it's been rented or available. So we can continue on with our code. If, again, as if .range K and the item row equals empty, then it's a new row. Empty, then new item row. Why is that? Let's go over that again. And if, close our loops, make sure we put an else because we're going to need both. Else, I'll go over that with you again, just so we know where we're paged. We're looking here. If this is empty here, K, we're going to move it over K. This is where I'm going to put it. We can hide that. This is going to be our item. If it's empty, we need to add a brand new item row. If it's existing, then we know what row. So we can do that with this line of code. So if the item row is new, then what do we want to do? Then I want to assign an item database row. Then the item database rows equal to, they're located in sheet 5. Sheet 5, that's where our items are. Sheet 5 dot range A, and then we'll use a 99999 dot end xlf dot row +1 first available items database row. Okay, that's the first one. So we've got our item row, so we know that. And if we're ready to go, so if this is a brand new one, we need to add some more information here, right? If it's new, Orders are items. What do I want to do? I want to add in the order name, and I want to add in the row. Everything else we can add in automatically because it could change. But the order ID won't change. The row won't change. So I want to add those in only for new items. The order ID, where's the order ID? It's going to come from right here, G4. And I also want to add in the row. What is the row? It's just a formula, so I can keep track of the row. It's going to really help us moving forward. So let's do that right now. Let's add in that information. Sheet 5 dot range A and the item database row dot value equals, what's it going to equal? It's going to equal G4, which is the order ID. Dot range G4, and that's the order ID. I also want to add in the formula too. So what is that? That will be in E. Sheet 5 dot range E and the item database row dot value equals, and then a formula, quotation equals, and then row, open and close parentheses. Okay, that's going to get us our row. So we do those just for that. And I also want to add in the item database row in K. Now it's an existing, so we add it in. Dot range K and the item row dot value equals, what is it? The item database row equals the item database row. Now we've added in item database row. What's that going to do? It's going to add that row. So if we're adding the information in, so we're adding the brand new information here in the outer, let's say we're adding the information in row 5. We're adding it, the order ID, we're adding the row, but I also want to take 5 and I want to put it right here in K. Because I want to know that it's 5 for the future. So that's going to really help us. So I want to put that 5 right here. That's where the item database row gets placed right here. So we know what row it's existing on. Okay, now we can continue on. Let's fix this K and the item and okay. So we got covered. So now we've got K covered. But what if it's an existing row? Well, if it's an existing row, then what do I want to do? Then the item row is simply whatever's in K already. The item row is already here. Okay, so we can define that. So then in that case, the item database row is equal to what's in K, existing item database row. So now we've defined it, and now we've added it new, and now that we know the row, we can add in the remaining information. So sheet 5 dot range B, what's going to go in B? B is going to go in the equipment name B and the item database row dot value. What's going to go there? Equals whatever's in D. I'll show that to you. Say dot range D and the item row dot value, and that's the item name. And all we're doing basically there is whatever's basically in here in the item name in D, we're going to take it and we're going to put it in right here in equipment B, and then we're going to do description and rate. So I'm going to do that right now. And all we need to do is just simply copy and paste this, and we can do this for the next 3. So we'll do this with C and D. C and D. And what are those going to be equal to? Those are going to be equal to basically the equipment description and the rate. So of course that's going to go into E and G, and that's description and then the rate. We have the rate here. So we want to add all that information in. So good, now we've got that. Now we've got the next item row, and also I also want to update all the values here. I want to update these all to rented or all to available here as well. So let's do that with this line of code. And we can just copy this. We have it already here, but we'll just change this then. I'm going to copy this. If, in this case, if equals then, what I want to do, I want to use it. So then dot range F, starting at 13 through F and the last item row dot value. So if it's not empty, that means it's available, right? So we can change it then equals available. Else what? Else it's rented. Okay, so if it's empty, then it's rented. So then in that case, just copy this, and we can actually copy and paste and just change it to rented. So if it's not equal empty, it's rented. So let's just change it here to rented. In that case, it is empty, and that's rented. So let's just go over it. So all we're doing here is basically If this contains a value, E10, then I want to make sure to show these all as available. If it's empty, I want to show all of these as rented. So good. So we've got that going. We updated that. I want to update that. We've also updated in the database. All right. So what else do I want to do? I want to make sure that now that we've set this up, I want to make sure we set B3 to the new order. It's no longer a new order. It's an existing because we've just saved it. So we want to make sure that new order goes to false. So B3 must be set to false. So dot range B3 dot value equals false. Set new order to false. And I also want to update our shapes, right? Because I want to make sure that our shapes are, take a look at our shapes here. I want to make sure our new order, add new button, is displayed and our cancel new order is hidden. So let's do that right now. Dot shapes, cancel new button, dot visible equals false, right? Because we want to hide the cancel new, no longer the new. Dot shapes, add new button is now visible because it's no longer new, just in case. Dot visible equals MSO true. So we want to show and hide those accordingly. All right, good. Let's test it out. Let's check for any bugs now. What we're going to do is I'm going to save the code just in case we meet any errors. Then I'm going to take this, save, and I'm going to take the group here. I'm going to assign a macro to it. So let's go assign macro, and then we'll go down to order, save, update, and click OK. There's a lot of macros, but those are for the calendar. So now when we click, let's save it again just in case. So now we click save and update. Let's debug it and see equipment row equals C in dot range item row. Okay, actually this should be up. We got the wrong run. Excel up, of course. Let's fix that. It should be Excel up because we can't. All right, so let's reset that and then run it again. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now let's take a look. We have our order list. We have our information here. We didn't put in a created by, but that looks good. We didn't put in an order date. Our order items, we have our items. Let's update that. That looks pretty good there. Got our information here. The rate didn't go in. We got to update the rate if there is one. Let's update that. And then as soon as we get the update rates, that's the only thing that did miss us. So let's take a look at that. Our order or rate is going to come from G and make sure our rate goes into D. So let's take a look at the code here and take a look at that. Our rate goes into D. It should be G. Okay, a rate comes from G. All right, good. So our rate comes from G. All right, so now I think we're good to go. Let's update that. Save and update, and then take a look at our order items. Okay, now we have our rates in there. Got the right column there. Perfect. Looking really good. So now we've got new order. Now all we need is add new order and save and update, and then we're going to be done. So we've done a lot of work. Great. So let's see. And we've got our columns here. Why do we do this? Now we have our, so now what if we want to add a new item? So now if I add a new item like excavator and I save and update, notice this one doesn't have a row. Let's left justify that so you can see that. Notice there's no row on that. That's going to tell Excel to add it to a brand new row. So notice it's going to add it to row 9 here. So as soon as we save and update that, 9's going to get placed here. When we go into orders, now it's here, 9. Now we know an order. Okay, but I want to load this order. So how do I load the order? What I want to do is I want to take all of the order items. This is going to be more than one order ID. It's going to be maybe 1, 2, or 3, or 4, as many as you want. And I want to load them. But to do that, I want to run it through an advanced filter based on a single order, based on an order ID. Only want to load order number 1. Only want to load order number 2. So how do we do that? Well, we use an advanced filter. So I'm going to take all this data. I'm going to run it through a filter based on some criteria, based on the order number. And then I'm going to put the results right here. And then what I want to do is I want to take all the results. Would be just one order, like order number 1 or whatever. So we need a criteria, and that criteria is going to be here. But how do we know what order? So I'm going to do equals whatever we enter right here equals G4. So that means whatever order we're looking for is only those. In fact, we only have one order right now, but if we were to create a new order, which we haven't written the macro yet, it would allow us to create a new work order. We're going to load that, but let's do that. Let's create a new work order here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to load the previous work order. So let's write some macros, at least for the new order now, so we can get that done. So we have order save, order load macros, and let's write in order. Let's create a new module, insert module, and we'll call this order just some general order max. And we'll call this here order macros. And what I'll do is I'm going to call this sub order new. And what do I want? Basically what I want to do is I want to clear out all the information. I want to delete any pictures, and I want to set it up for a brand new order. So we can do that really easily with sheet 1. And then I'm going to make sure we remove any pictures that might be here. And then what I'm going to do is remove any pictures. So on air, resume next, and then on air, go to 0. I'm going to wrap that. I want to delete the picture, basically what we did before. So what we can do is then dot shapes, equipment picture, dot delete. I don't want to delete any pictures when we're creating a new work order. Remove any existing picture. And then on air, resume next. That'll set us up. Okay, on air, go to 0. And then on air, go to 0. That's going to set us up so we can continue on with our code. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to set the new order to dot range B3 is going to be true. Set up equals true. Set new order to true. Okay, so let's move this over here so we can see it. B3 is going to be set to true. Bring this up here and down here. B3, we're going to set it true. We want to show it's a new order. And we also want to display certain buttons like cancel new. I want to display that button. So we can do that in a few lines of code. So the first thing we want to do is also want to clear out some contents. Dot range. Which ones do I want to clear out? B7, right? There's no longer going to be a selected row, so I want to clear that out. I also want to clear out all of the items here. So all of, let's say, E4, E6, E8, and E10, clear those out. Order date, we can default that and set the default and clear out the payments. So let's clear out some of those cells so we can get ready for the next order. E4, E6, E8, and E10, clearing all those out. I also want to make sure that G8, which is the payments, G8, and also want to make sure I6, clearing all those out. I6, making sure that we clear out the payments, of course, and then the G6 is the order date. Okay, but let's set in some defaults and get it ready for the new order. Dot clear contents, clear fields. Okay, that's at least the fields above. So I want to set the next order ID. We know the next order is going to be here based on that. So we're going to take whatever value is here and we're going to put it into G4. So we can do that just with this line of code. Dot range G4 dot value equals dot range B5. That's going to set us up for the next order, B5. Next order ID. Okay, next up, what do we have? Now that we have the next order ID, we're going to get ready. We want to add a current. Let's add in the current date. Dot range G6 dot value equals now. What is that going to do? I want to put the current date and possibly current time right here into G6, getting that ready for the next order. So now we have that. What else do I want to do? I want to clear out the table. Remember, I have some formulas in here, so we need to be very careful. I don't want to clear that's a formula. I just want to clear out these, the daily rate, basically the item name, all the way from D13 all the way through G26, and not these, not H and I, because those are formulas. And I want to clear out also on K. So let's do that in the following lines of code. Dot range D13 through G26, and also K, right? K13 through K26. Clearing those out because those keep track of our rows. So we want to clear those out. Dot clear contents. Clear table, but not formulas. Okay, we want to make sure we don't clear out those formulas. All right, next up, we just set the buttons ready, right? Dot shapes. We have an dot shapes. We have an add new button. New button. I want to display that. Dot visible, and I want to hide that. Dot visible equals MSO false. I want to hide that. Hide. And then dot shapes cancel new. I want to make sure that button's visible. Cancel new button. Dot visible equals MSO true. That one's show cancel. Okay, so we're going to show the cancel button and hide the add new button because they just add. And next up, let's get ready. Dot range E4. That's the customer. Dot select. And that's going to select customer field. Okay, so now we're going to select customer field. All right, let's save our code And let's assign this macro. We can always copy this macro. And then what we're going to do is assign that, take the add new button, click assign macro, and paste that in that code. Click OK. Now order new, perfect, looks good. We got the new one, we got the current date, payments are cleared out, make sure our formulas didn't get messed up. They're in there. Our formulas are here, good. All right, now, so what I want to do, now we're ready for a new order. Let's just add a new order in so we can add, so we have more than one order. Add in an expected date, and then let's just add in a little bit of information here. Okay, and put in just a few equipments, nothing major. I just want to save it, created by Fred. And we don't need a returned on date. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click save and update. Both of these went to rented. That's what I want. I want it to go to rented because there's no returned on date. Perfect. Let's look in our order list. We have 2, order date. It's a longer field. Now we have Fred. Good, good, good. No return date, right? No payments yet. That's right. Order items. Now we have 2 different orders. We have 1 and 2. That's what I want. Everything looks good. Let's right justify this, or left justify it, I should say. The whole. All right, so that's good. We don't need. All right, so good. Now we've got all the information. It's loading in just the way we want it. We're going to save it, and now what I want to do is I want to load this. I want to write a macro that when I enter number 1 here, I want that order to load automatically. Right. So let's do that. Let's write a macro that's going to load it based on the change of G4, assuming when we change this to 1, I need to make sure one thing. We need to make sure that there's an order row. Look, this changes from 1 to 2, changes from 4 to 5. That's what we want. We need to make sure that if we enter 10, this is going to be blank because there is no order. So we need to make sure that when they've entered it, we need to make sure that B4 actually contains a value before we're going to load it up. So we can do that with this line of code. All right, so let's add it in order. We got order load, order max. We can put it on here. We got a order pick. Okay, we can add it down here. We've got load. So let's call this load order, sub order load. Okay, and we're going to load this order. That's what I want to do. Basically, it's going to be on change of one specific field. So let's write the macro now. We need to dimension some details on this. Dimension order row. Again, we need to order that row as long. And also we need to order column. We're going to do the data mapping again. So we're going to loop through the columns. Order column as long. Result row, this time we're going to be using advanced filters, so I need to know what the results row is as long. And I also need to know the last item database row because we need to run an advanced filter, so we need to know the last row. Last item database row as long. And I'll need to know the last results row. The results are going to come in. Last results row as long. Okay. And I think the item row is long, and then item row as long. Why do we need that? Because we're going to probably loop through the item rows here, bring them all in. We need to know that item row. All right, now that we've got dimension, so basically what we're going to happen is we're going to run this advanced filter. We're going to get some results in here. I need to know the last results row. Then we're going to loop through all the results row here and bring all of that information back into here. And we're also, of course, going to go through the columns here, run 1 through 4. In fact, we won't need the ID. So we're going to actually start our loop on 2 through 8. Because the ID is already there, the user just put it in. 2 through 8, and bring all this information, whatever's in here, and bring it in back into the right cells here. Back into what cells? Well, back into this cell, this cell, this cell. So we've already used data mapping. We can use data mapping both for saving and for loading. It's an extremely convenient way. So let's go on and let's see with sheet 1. We're going to focus on that. What are we doing with sheet 1? First thing we want to do, of course, we got to, as I mentioned, we got to make sure B4 contains a value. We can't load an order if there's no row. So if .range B4.value equals empty, then message box, please enter a correct order number. All right, so we've got that, and then exit sub. Nothing we can do unless we have a row number, exit sub. Nothing, can't continue on unless we actually have a row. So now we can define it. Now we know order row equals what? B4. So we can just copy and paste B4. We know that's the order row equals B4. Order row. Pretty self-explanatory there. Okay, so what next? Again, I want to run our loop, right? Remember, so for order column, just as we did, but it's going to be in reverse. Just as we did when we're saving your column, equals 2 through 8. to 8. The only difference is we ran 1 through 8 before, but this time we don't need to bring over the order ID. The user has just entered the order ID. We don't need to bring it over. It's already there. So we don't need to start off in A, which is our order. We can start off in 2. So 2 through 8. We're going to run through all of that. So this one's going to start in 2 through 8, and then close our loop. Next order column. So what do I do now? Again, dot range, we're going to focus on sheet 1. What is the cell? Well, the cell is located in sheet 4 dot cells. It's located in row 1, right? 1. And what is the columns located? It's going to be located in the dynamic column, order column, and dot value. So that's going to get us our range. Remember, this right here is our cell. This cell will change as it moves through the top column. So it equals what? What does it equal? It equals sheet 4 dot cells. What's the row? The row, of course, is our order row, and the column is our order column. Dot value. That's it. That's all we have to do to bring in all the data, at least for the top part, and the rest of the code we can write according to for the items. So that's it. It's really easy. Now let's write a note, add in order items. We can make this a little bit bigger so we can see, although we're not doing too much code, but bring it up. Okay, so now we're ready to add in the order items. So how do we do that? Well, again, we have our criteria. We do need the last row. Why do I need the last row? I want to run an advanced filter here. I want to determine the last row, run an advanced filter based on this criteria or based on order ID 1. That means I only want to return values where we have a 1 in the order ID. That's the only one I want to return. And I want those results, only items with order ID 1 to result to come here. And we can use that with advanced filter. But the first thing we need to do is determine the last row into a variable. So we can do that with this line of code. The last item database row equals sheet 5, that's item row, dot range, A99, just use a high 99, dot end, XLF, dot row. It's going to get us our last row. I also want to, we're going to be looping through the items. I also want to define our first item row, order sheet here. I want to define our order row 13 because we're going to go through all of them. I want to define our item row here and make sure that's set to 13 because we're going to be increasing it as we move through it. So the starting one's going to be 13. So let's set that also up. So our item row is equal to 13, and that's our first item row. Okay, now that we have those set, we're ready to run our advanced filter. Sheet 5 is where we're going to run our advanced filter. Dot range, and what's it going to continue? It's going to contain, of course, our first header row, and that's going to be A2, including our headers, all the way through E and the last item database row. E and the last item database row. Dot advanced filter. I want to run an advanced filter, and it's going to copy. I want to copy the results to another location, but I want to set a criteria. Criteria range is going to equal, again, sheet 5 dot range, and what is it going to equal? Let's take a quick look at that so we know. Order items, it's going to be including the header G2 through G3, and the results are going to go I2 all the way to M2. So let's write that. G2 through G3. Okay, next up, I also want the copy to range. Copy to range. And what is the range that we're copying to? Equals, going to copy again, sheet 5, the same thing what I just mentioned, I2 through M2. Range I2 through M2. Okay, great. Dot, and then, all right, unique, and we'll just go with equals false. All right, that's our line of code. Let's just put that into 2 so you can see that here. I'm going to put it in 2 words. All right, just take a quick look at that so we know we're at the sheet 5, A2 through E in the last item row. This is our main data. We're going to run an advanced filter. We're going to copy that, and we're going to be using criteria range equal to sheet 5, G2 through G3. I'm going to copy that to sheet 5, I2 through M2, and unique equals false. Good. All right, now that we run our advanced filter, what I need to do is figure out what the last row is. So the last results row, we've defined last result row equals to sheet 5 dot range I, we'll use I because we know there's data in there, I, and then 99999, that's fine. Dot end XLF dot row. This is the last results row. We also need to run a check. That's misspelled. Okay, last result row. If the last result row is less than 3, then go to no data. Or we could just exit the sub. Let's go to no data. I like that better. No data. Because why do we don't want to exit this up? Because there's a few more things that I want to do when we're loading it. Like I want to make sure. Let's go to put no data. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll add some more code in below here, like making sure the buttons are appearing right. All right, so continuing on. Now that we know that we have data, what do I mean by last results row? If they're less than 3, if the last is less than 3, that means we have no data. There's nothing to bring over. So we want to check that just in case. Next up, we're ready to bring all this information over and bring it into our order. And we can do that with just a few lines of code right here. For the results row equals 3, starting at 3, to the last result row. Next result row. All right, good. So now we've got that. So now we're going to consider loops. Now we're going to bring it in. So I'm going to bring in each line of code. Dot range D and the item row dot value equals, what's it going to equal? Sheet 5 dot range J and the results row dot value, and that's the equipment name. Equipment name. So I'm going to bring in the name, the description, and the rate. So we're going to copy that, and basically what that is just again what we're doing. D is going to equal whatever is located right here into J, and then all I need to do is bring in K and L over the description and the rate. So we can do that just by copying and pasting it. So paste and paste. Okay, so now we have that. Let's bring that over, make sure everything's the same. Okay, so D, E, and F is going to equal whatever's in J, K, and L. And then there's one more thing I do need to do. So of course this is going to be description, and this is going to be the rate. And then there's one more thing. I also want to bring in K over. Why do I want to do that? K is very important because K is going to tell us what row is in. So we know that it's an existing in case we need to make an update. So K, remember K is our row. K, what's that going to come from? That K is simply what our located is in our, it is in M, from M. It's coming from M. Why is that? Let's take a look at that. M is our row, so I want to bring in that and bring it over and put it right into K. Put it in right here. That's very important. All right, so we can do that with this. So just change this to M, and then it's going to be our item row. All right, now that we've done everything, we're ready to go. We've updated that. So what I want to do is I want to increase the item row. Remember, we've set this item row at 13, so we need to increase this by 1. Item row equals item row plus 1. So we're going to increase that row. And next up, we're ready to do that. Okay, good. Now that we have that, if I also want to update our rented and available again too. What do I mean by that? I want to update these, our rented and available, just to make sure to reset these based on this again, just in case, so we know that it's automatically set. So we can do that on load again. So we can do that if dot range, again, E10, E10 dot value equals blank, right? Equals empty. Then we know it hasn't been returned yet. So then dot range, what is it? F13 through F and what? And the item row and item row, but it's not the item row because we added one here. So we'll probably have to go one under, right? Because we kept adding an extra one. Minus 1 dot value, what is it going to equal? It's empty. It still equals, if it's empty, it's still rented, right? Rented. It hasn't been returned yet. Rented. Else what? Else and if. Otherwise, it's available. Otherwise, let's just copy this, paste it in here, equals available. Right? If E10 means it has a value in it right here, returned on, if it has a value, that means it's going to be rented. It's available. It's now available because it's been returned. So we can just basically change the status automatically to that. So that's really important. We want to do that. All right. So next up, I just want to make sure that we're going to set the new order to false. It's no longer a new order because we've loaded in dot range B3. We're almost done today. I know it's a long one. B3 dot value equals false. Set new order to false. What do I want to do? Now the shapes that we can copy those from up there. We saved an update. Same thing. These shapes here, it's now an existing order, so we can do that. Just paste them right in here. So cancel new button, right, is going to be false. Add new button is going to be true. Great. Now let's save our code. And now what I want to do is I want to run this code on G4. Change of G4. So let's do that. Let's add in some additional code, but first we're going to copy order load. When do we want this to happen? We want this to happen when G4 makes a change. So let's take a look at that. Up in the order sheet, and that's going to be worksheet change. If not, intersection G4 is nothing, then order to load the order. G4. So now when we change G4, the order is going to load. So let's type that in. So now let's double click that into that. The result row should be results. I think it's results. Add an S onto that, or just change it up here. Just change it. Let's just change it right there. Okay, let's take a look at that. And if else if, oh, just enter this. Okay, now we're good. We got it kind of. All right, that's got to have a new line. Let's continue on with the code. One more bug. Lots of bugs today. Last results row. I always get the variable end Excel A. Forgot the A there. All right, we look good. Now we've loaded it in. All right, this is not quite available. We got to get that row right. All right, I think what we really want to do is we want to actually clear the table before I load it. So when I load it now, it should be right. Okay. All right, let's update this. JK, this should be L. Okay, let's run it again. Take a look at that. All right, this should be G. Let's take a look at that. Now we can update that. Update the status. All right, that looks pretty good. Two more things. We got to make sure that we're adding too many variables. All right, let's take a look at that into the code. And let's see the last results row. That's not right. That should be I, right? Our last results row, right? If our results are coming in here, I want to know the last results row. It should be here, right? I, not A. A is for our last data row, right? We want to know the last data row. That's important, but that's only for our last database row. So let's take a look at that now. Let's load that in. All right, and then we'll just type that in, clear this out, let's delete that for now, and then load that in. Okay, that looks right. Now everything is right. When we click a new order, good. Please enter correct. Okay, so new order, we need to make sure that we have one little thing we want to add in. When we're adding in our sheet, before we load our order, I want to make sure one thing. If not, I don't want to load an order and range. I want to make sure that we actually have a B4 dot value does not equal empty, right? Then, so let's make sure, right? Before we need a and, so that we want to do and, so there's two conditions. We want to make sure that B4, we can't, if we put in a row number here, we want to make sure that B4 actually has a row even before we load it. So when we load it, we want to make sure it loads properly. And we select picture, perfect, looks good. All right, two more macros to write, and then we're gonna be done. Delete order, very good, and save cancel new order. All I wanna do is cancel new. So let's write those two macros, and then we are done. All right, awesome. Order macros, let's just write one more. Sub, order, cancel, and then order delete. Thanks for sticking with me on this super long training. Order, delete. Some of them we'll get back to now, but when you guys want me to create these from scratch, they tend to be a lot longer. But the views tell me you want to create it from scratch, so I will do just as you ask, because I know you love these, so I want to make sure to give you always what you like. Okay, so cancel new. Let's add this one. We're going to make sure the only way we can cancel the new, we can only get out of the new if there's existing orders. So I want to make sure that A4 actually contains a value, because if there are no existing orders, we can't go out of the new mode. So to do that, we need to make sure that A4 on this sheet contains a value. So we can write that code in right here. If sheet 4 dot range A4 dot value does not equal empty, then we can do a few things. What do I want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is sheet 1 dot range B3, that's our order, B3 dot value equals false. We're going to set the equals false. We want to set the new order to false. Set new order to false. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to load in that sheet 1 dot range. Again, that's G4 is where our orders look. G4 dot value equals what's going to equal that A4 value, which is the order ID, the first order ID. So we're just going to copy that and put that right in here. Control C and paste that right in here. That's the order ID, order ID. And that's all we really have to do. It's going to load automatically. So that's on the cancel. And what about delete? Well, the first thing I want to do, delete, I want to make sure the user wants to do it. So dim, we need to order row first. Order row as long. And next up, I want to say if message, give the user a warning, message box, are you sure you want to delete this order? And then VB yes, no. That's an option here. VB yes or no, and then delete title, delete. Let's bring this up so you can see it a little bit more on top of the screen. Delete order, just call that's the title of the message box, order. And then good, equals VB no, then exit sub. If they say no, just exit sub, nothing more to do. Assuming they said yes, then we want to make sure that there is actually a row to order. So we can set if sheet1.range b4, that's our order row, b4 dot value equals empty, then exit sub. There's no row to delete. There's nothing we can do. We can go. Assuming that there is a row, then we can say the order row is equal to, again, let's put that into sheet 1 b4 value here, equals b4 value. All right, that's the order row. Now we're ready to delete it. Sheet 4 is where our orders are. Dot range order row and quotation, colon, quotation, and order row dot entire row dot delete. That's going to delete the entire row. Delete entire row. I also want to clear out the existing order, and the best way to do that is just to simply run the macro order new. Order new is going to run the new macro. That's going to, okay, good. Let's save that and see what we've done here. Now let's assign those macros. Assign a macro here, and we'll call it order delete here, which is located right here. And then I'll also want to assign this one, assign macro order cancel right there. Okay, good. So let's try the cancel new. Perfect. That brings up, that works just good. And let's load order number 2 and let's click delete the order. Are you sure you want to delete this order? Yes. Perfect. Now let's go into the order list. Order 2 is gone here. Now theoretically you should also delete these items too. We don't have kind of time, but theoretically you should probably delete those too. Run the advanced filter, determine what rows they are on, loop through these, and then delete each row. That's the proper way to do that, but we got a lot of time. We're already, what are we, 2 hours nearly on this video, so I think we're good. Okay, so great. We've gotten a lot to cover. We've added new orders, simply using a amazing pop-up calendar, and I've shown you how to quickly create new rental orders and also add equipment, listing those items, listing those pictures, and showing how we can select on different pictures. And we also have added a lot of new features onto this. We also show you how to add payments and save those payments, how to update the order based on the return date, update the status. Clicking save and update is going to update those. We can also add new items simply by adding them and clicking save and update using the same macro for both save and new. Of course, with a new order, we can clear it out, canceling the new order, and deleting orders. We've covered a lot in this amazing equipment rental. Thanks for sticking with me. Those of you who have stuck with me for nearly 2 hours on this great training, I hope you appreciate these. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.